to be used as our base color, we can set its color space to something like utility sRGB texture and connect it to the base color and set the base weight to 1. We want to use the same image for the sheen color as well, but we want it to be brighter compared to the base color texture. So connect the map to an Arnold color correct node. Now connect the color correct node to the sheen color input of the standard surface shader. I'm going to increase the gamma to 3 in the color correct node so we get a quite brighter version of our original texture. Now we need to connect the color correct node to the sheen color input of the standard surface shader. Now set the sheen weight to something like 0.6 and the sheen roughness to something like 0.3. For the bump map, connect the original fabric pattern image to a bump map input of a bump 2D node. Set the bump height to 1 or even 2 centimeters because we want the pattern to be quite obvious, and connect the bump 2D node to the normal input. And here is our beautiful realistic cotton. While we are here, let's create a colored version of this. Simply duplicate the whole shader and assign it. Add a layer RGBA node, which allows you to layer up textures and RGBA inputs. Use the fabric pattern image as input 1. And use this light reddish brown as the layer 2 color. And set the second layer operation to negation and connect the layer RGBA to the base color input. And simply use the same layer RGBA node as the input for the color correct node that is connected to the sheen color. For this to look better, let's increase the sheen weight to something like 0.8. So it really depends on what you are looking for. If you want more of that fuzzy feeling, just increase the sheen weight. Let's see what we get. And here we have it. From now on, you can skip the rest of the lesson as we'll be creating just a bit more complex fabric shaders. So skip the rest of the video if you wanted to, or if you're curious, just keep watching. Next, let's go for a satin look. And for this one, we won't be utilizing the sheen component. As for satin, if you take a look at this reference photo, you notice satin is different and the highlights are kind of playing with you. There is no well-defined pattern that you can describe, but I have pretty good formula to create highly realistic satin or silk shaders, and it involves curves. Let's create a new standard surface shader. Zero out the specular weight and assign it to the fabric geometry. For silk, first we need a facing ratio node. Let's load it and connect it to our base color. Facing ratio outputs 0 or black for the perpendicular faces to our viewing direction and 1 or white for the parallel faces to our viewing direction. But we want to be able to remap these values. For this, we can use a ramp float node. So connect the facing ratio node to the input port of the ramp float and connect the ramp float to the base color input of the standard surface shader. Now using this curve, we can remap these values to whatever we want. There is a particular curve that results in a very, very close look to satin or silk. Now let's open the curve in a separate window. We are trying to put the highest and brightest values to be a bit off of the exact parallel angles to our viewing direction. Making the very frontal angles a bit brighter at something like 0.1 or 0.2. And a curve like this should give us a silk-like look. Just maybe it needs a bit more work to make it better. I have saved out a better version of this curve. Let me paste it here. This should give us a really nice satin shader, as you can see. The next thing would be to incorporate the specific colors that we are looking for. To do that, we can use a Mix RGBA shader. And connect the ramp flow to the mix input of the Mix RGBA node. For the input 1 color, let's use the dark purple, and for the input 2 color, use this brighter shade of the same color. So that's the same formula, a darker shade and a brighter shade of the same color. And voila, you have a very realistic satin shader. To get a different satin color, you can simply change the input 1 and 2 colors. First, duplicate the satin shader and assign it. And let's use these dark and bright green colors. And here is our green satin shader. Now let's go for a towel shader. I'm going to create a new standard surface shader and assign it. Zero out the specular weight as always and open up the base and the sheen components. Use this darker shade of blue as the base color and set the base weight to 1. And this brighter shade of the same color as the sheen color and set the sheen weight to around 1. We already have this Arnold parameters tag applied to the fabric geometry. Let's go to the subdivision section and increase the iteration to about 4. We need more geometrical detail for the displacement mapping. We talk about displacement mapping later on in this section. For the displacement map, let's load this towel image. See, it's a black and white version of a kind of rough towel. And set its styling to something like 0.6 and connect it to the displacement input of a displacement shader. And set the, obviously connect the displacement shader to the displacement port of the standard surface shader and set the displacement scale to something like 0.006. Now let's see what we get. And here is our towel shader. So that's about the sheen component of the standard surface shader and creating realistic fabric shaders in Arnold for Cinema 4D. So I will see you in the next video.